Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Before Baby podcast. I am your host, Lilli. I am a certified hypnotherapist. I run my own business where I help women overcome anxiety and disordered eating and a range of other things. It is my absolute passion in life. I bloody love it. But you may have come to this podcast from knowing me over on my TikTok series, where I have been taking my audience through my before baby journey. And I'll get into exactly what the heck that even is. But this podcast is really an extension of that TikTok series where I am just gonna do a deeper dive into some of the topics that we talk about over there, some of the things that we've, all collaborated on and found helpful and interesting and shared wisdom on. I thought, why not do a little bit more yapping about this? And if there's one thing that I can do, it's yap. So thank you so much for being here and for tuning into my first episode. I truly am really, really grateful. And the community that we've created over on TikTok has truly, truly warmed my heart. It's been such a lovely thing. As someone that works in my business alone all day, every day, to have that community has actually meant a lot to me. So thank you so much. And I'm hoping that this, as I said, is just an extension of that. So what is my before baby journey? Let me explain how I kind of came to the moment where I decided to share this on TikTok. So my husband and I got married last year in October, and we had this pretty loose idea of we'll start trying for a baby in 2026 after sort of the first few months of the year. And as that time started to get a bit closer, I noticed myself internally having a lot of anxiety around what's this gonna look like? There's so many unknowns in this. And I think, for so long in your lives, if you are someone that wants to have a baby, you have this loose idea of, yeah, we'll have babies and, we'll do this and da-da-da-da-da, but you don't, at least for me, I never really thought about it in a whole lot of depth. I just knew that's something that I wanted to do because family is really important to me and I wanted to create that next generation of my family. That's something that's important to me, but I never really thought about it all that much. So as the time started getting closer and closer, I was like, what the heck's going on? And just started to feel like a lot of internal anxiety. So there was that aspect of it where I started to notice things getting very real. And I want to say, I think that is an important realization for me to have had, that this is very real, because it is real. But then there was also this moment where I thought, before I have kids, before we even start trying, there are some things that I really want to work on within myself. And when I say that I never really thought too much about having kids, this was actually the one aspect that I did think about. And I remember it specifically about 4 or 5 years ago. Obviously I'm a hypnotherapist, so I see every single day the impact that parents can have on their children. And that is obviously varying degrees of impact. But I see it all the time. And I remember thinking about 4 or 5 years ago, before I have kids, I want to work on some stuff. There's some stuff that I want to deal with within myself that I don't want negatively impacting them. And then honestly, life got in the way. I've been so focused on my business and just like the everyday things that these very specific things that I wanted to work on just kind of floated by until this very real realization of, holy crap, this is happening, started. And I want to make a big disclaimer here that in no way ever am I having the idea or the intention that I want to be perfect before I have a baby, or that I think anyone should try to be, or that I think that I am never going to have a negative impact on my child, because 100% I will, because we all do. But for me, it was more, if there's anything that I am very aware of within myself that I want to work on, but I choose not to, I'll be disappointed in myself. So I decided to give myself this bit of a timeline of, you need to work on these things within this timeline before you guys start trying for a baby. So the things that I really wanted to work on within myself were emotional regulation was the first one, which I do think is a bit of a lifelong thing that you need to work on as things come up and as your emotions are tested. But specifically for me, honestly, it was anger. I am a fiery lady. I have always been fiery, and there's aspects of this that I love about myself, truly. I will always stand up for myself. I will always stand up for others. I'll never let myself be pushed around. I'm very strong in that, I suppose. And I like that about myself. But there is this other side of it where, particularly within my relationship, I can be very argumentative. I'm not afraid to shy away from conflict. I can get angry, and I don't admire that about myself. I don't think that that is something that I want to pass on to my child at all. It's not something that I want them to see in their mum, because it's not something I'm proud of. And I think it's like an important thing to say that, of it is okay to have things that you're not proud of that you choose to work on, which is a reason as to why I wanted to share it on TikTok as well, because sometimes I think when we hold shame on things, we don't work on them because we're almost too afraid to even admit that that's something that we struggle with. So that was the first thing. The second thing was a bit of health anxiety. It's not something that is super consuming for me, but it's something that I notice when, for instance, a family member maybe has to get something checked, like a mole or a lump or something like that. I immediately turn to the worst of like the worst thing that could happen, and it does cause me anxiety. And I know with kids, of course, they're gonna get sick. They're gonna fall over and bump their head. And I don't, one, want to be worrying about them all the time, but two, I don't want them to feel like they need to worry about this stuff all the time. We know that kids are sponges. They take on how you, not necessarily what you say, but what you do. And I really didn't want to pass that type of anxiety onto my kid if I could help it. And then the third thing that I really wanted to work on was some feelings of, I suppose, self-belief. I have always had this little bit of a belief within myself, and it's gotten better over years for sure, but there has always been this bit of a belief of I'm not capable, or if there was someone next to me, I would kind of automatically assume that they were more capable. And I think, I don't really know where that comes from. The only thing that I can maybe attribute it to was I'm the baby of the family. I have two older siblings. I have two beautiful parents. And as privileged and whatever and princessy as it sounds, they've always kind of taken care of me and done things for me. And that was kind of my experience growing up, I suppose. I'm also very lazy, so I'm more than happy to let that happen. And I think, unknowingly, potentially it's led to feelings of other people are more capable than I am. And, I've definitely challenged that in recent years of, having my own business and doing things very independently. But I think it is this part of me that does feel like, are you going to be able to do that? Are you going to be able to have a kid? And are you going to be able to raise it as well as someone else could raise it. So there's just these feelings that I wanted to overcome, or to just get a little bit more confident in. And like I said, it's not at all an aspiration to be perfect. It's not at all an aspiration to be a better parent than anyone else or anything. It's definitely just something where I have felt I want to work on these things, and I think now is the perfect time to do it. I also know when you have kids, it sounds like you don't have a whole lot of time. So I thought now more than ever, I should probably be working on these things. And so I guess at this point, you're maybe thinking, okay, cool. So there's these things you wanted to work on. You're a hypnotherapist, so I guess you kind of know how to work on these things. But why do I, as the public, know about it? And that is kind of the other half of this, where I was thinking all these things, and then I was Googling how to work on myself before babies, or like a course to work on yourself before you have a baby, like the inner work before you have a baby, basically. And not a whole lot came up. Some kind of boring textbooks and stuff came up. Some, very sort of standardized mental health checklists came up. And beyond that, it was more like, before you have a baby, take your prenatals, get your GP checkups, get your gene testing and stuff. And like, that is all so important, but I think it kind of only tackles the physical side of it and has neglected the mental side of it all, of how can we try and become the best versions of ourselves before we start trying for a baby, and how can we go into this next chapter feeling confident within ourselves, and like we're ready in that sense. And I think it's something that hasn't really been spoken about all that much, and definitely something that I'm super passionate about. So I thought, well, it doesn't seem like anyone's really speaking about this, so maybe I'll speak about it. And I guess there was a lot of conflicting feelings within me, and also some people that I love so much saying to me, but do you want to put this out there? Like, if you put out there that you're trying for a baby, it can be quite distressing for you if people know that, and it's taking a really long time, and people are going to ask you how you're going with it, and that could be really frustrating, and you're kind of putting yourself in the lion's den, right? And that definitely made me stop and think, oh, do I really want to do this? But then I just kind of had this feeling of, no, I'm really passionate about this. I think this is worth sharing. I think my passion for this is greater than my fear of it. I'm also not new to, I guess, vulnerability in that sense. A little bit about me, I had an eating disorder as a teenager, which is how I came to work in hypnotherapy and helping other people, because hypnotherapy is what really worked for me. But in my recovery process, this was like 12 years ago or more. Sorry, not great at math, but I think about that time. I would share a lot of it on my socials about how I was overcoming that, what was working for me, and just being very vulnerable in that sense. And then, of course, with my business, I speak a lot about what I went through in the hopes to help others as well. So I probably do have a little bit of desensitized feelings towards vulnerability. So I think in that essence, maybe I'm the perfect person to do it, because the vulnerability doesn't scare me as much, which could be a good thing, could be a not so good thing. I think being desensitized to anything probably isn't good, but it just didn't scare me all that much. So I decided to put it out on TikTok, the things that I was going to work through, and I was just going to share how I was working through that. And I remember the first video I put out getting messages of like, this is exactly what I've been thinking about. This is exactly what I want to work on. I'm so glad that you're doing this. So that was really great. And then I started also talking about just things that I was feeling in regards to this whole process of, holy crap, this is a really unknown time. Like this, we in this sort of before trying phase, it's a really vulnerable position for a woman to be in when she doesn't know what the next year, 2 years are going to look like for her. If, you know, you're going to experience something horrible like loss, if, you know, some of the hardest days that you'll ever experience are ahead of you, if it's going to be a really simple process, what's going to physically happen to you, like how your body is physically going to react to all of this. It just became so like abundantly clear that women were wanting to talk about this very uncomfortable phase of life where it's exciting, but it's desperately uncomfortable and desperately unknown. So we started having these discussions and helping each other. And it's been, like I said, such a beautiful experience for me to be able to speak to all these women about this. And it has absolutely enriched my life. So that's kind of where it's at the moment. We've been doing it for a few months and it's been such a lovely experience. And I thought, why not make a podcast where we just deep dive into this a little bit more, and talk about the topics that have been really resonant for some of us, and things where it comes up and we're like, oh my gosh, thank God we're talking about this. You know, I get messages from women all the time saying, hey, I really wanted to comment on your post, but no one knows that we're trying yet, so like they just want to share something with me. And I love being able to be that space for women to share where no one else in their life knows that they're trying, but they desperately want to talk about this stuff. So that's been really beautiful for me as well, and I welcome that so much. Like I love getting messages from you all and feeling like I can provide a bit of a safe space for that discussion. That's just is really beautiful to me. So yeah, that's what this podcast is going to be. We'll just kind of be going into the topics and chatting and yapping and all the things that we love to do. So thank you so much for joining me for this first episode. I believe the episodes will be weekly. That's the plan, but you know, cut me some slack if that's not the case, because I'm just a gal. But yeah, thank you so much for joining in. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you on the next episode of the Before Baby podcast. Thank you so much.